Since you've joined the stream, everyone's begging for you to leave. The vibe's down. It's boring. It's late at night for me. I came here to have fun. You're being boring. No one thinks you're cool. No one thinks you're intelligent. No one thinks you're funny. We had a hot chick. Now you're here. Once you're 18...
Is Andrew Tate losing his free speech a good thing? Yes. So if you're an Andrew Tate fan and you're watching this video and you're just kind of sick of hearing another beta cuss make some long-winded argument about whatever, I want to make something clear to you for a moment. I'm stronger than Andrew Tate. I'm faster than Andrew Tate. Here's the thing, I'm going like this, but I'm actually going to go. I'm smarter than Andrew Tate. I'm more cunning than Andrew Tate. So I was listening to this debate between Hensonn and Andrew Tate.
Completely. It's my personal opinion based on my personal biases of my life experience. Now, when I say these, yeah, exactly. And when I say these things, X amount of people agree with me and X amount of people disagree with me. I could say the world is round and there'll be a percentage of people who disagree with me.
They had a disagreement. I believe it was on a dating and masculinity advice show for teenagers hosted by two teenagers.
Pull her in gently and give her a kiss.
Yep.
Give her a kiss. Pull her in.
You kiss my cheek.
Do it. Once you're 18... If you want to get yourself a real man, the reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. Had one guy from high school, just broke up, she's fresh, and I can fucking put my imprint on her and make her a good person.
That Andrew Tate was attending to advertise a recent pyramid scheme.
The global organization with members, bases, and influence in over 70 countries.
Is the War Room also a Discord server?
No. Don't be ridiculous. It's a Telegram channel. Every member has either achieved or is working towards the ultimate goal of all intelligent men, freedom in a world of slavery. So some of them are still slaves. Some of the members are still slaves, but they're working towards freedom.
I have my biases going into it, you know. I'm a male feminist. I'm a proud male feminist.
I think I need to be a male feminist to be able to attract women.
And the debate was actually on if women could drive. So Andrew Tate's position was that women couldn't drive, and Hensonn's position was that actually they could. Actually, that's wrong, and women can drive. Two different perspectives. Hensonn's perspective was basically that, you know, you might have your own biases. You might have had certain experience, maybe you were a kid and you got in a car accident and your mum was driving or something, right? And then maybe you're like, oh, women are bad drivers. But then, you know, sometimes you got to look at data and studies and stuff, like research that's conducted by car insurance companies, for instance, which is the reason why, in general, women get lower rates. Because of research that's done that's showing actually no, you can't just say as a rule that women are worse drivers. In fact, there's some data that seems to suggest the opposite.
Now, your own personal experiences are oftentimes going to be incorrect. That's why there's an entire field of statistical analysis. That's why we rely on empirical evidence when we're making decisions.
But see, what Andrew said was...
The heart of all of that, all of those accomplishments lies
5 months
an understanding of arriving at the truth through empirical evidence.
You done?
Yeah.
In my personal experiences, all of the car crashes I've been involved in, all the times my car was hit, and all the negative experience I've had on the road, women were at fault.
So it kind of doesn't matter, really, what you're going to read, because it's like, oh, that's what someone read, but I know what I see.
You can drag up all the empirical evidence in the world you want to try and drag up. Anyone with a brain knows how that aids the world agendas anyway. I don't want to go too political on a stream that's going to get taken down.
So that's just, so from his experience, he's mainly seen women be bad drivers. I'm sure there's never been any bad driving in his vicinity.
Any of you watching this video, if you were in the same situation I was in, would be dead. I'm in the 911 Turbo 992, boom, floor it, bang. I'm about 120 miles an hour going up the mountain. Some fucking idiot comes round the bend, so he's in my lane. Women were at fault. Flooring his Ferrari, full right lock the Porsche 911. What I did yesterday was fucking legendary.
So you're going 120 miles an hour in traffic around a blind turn, and you only had a minor car accident? Yeah, that's amazing driving.
I'm a fucking professional.
So those are the two perspectives. And the thing is, I'm afraid Andrew Tate's right. I'm afraid that Andrew Tate is correct. In his own words, you can believe what you want, but there is not a better answer. Man's correct because studies are conducted by people. or more specifically, institutions.
The fact that you're going on the internet, finding some study and saying that this is the truth, especially after the age of COVID and all the I don't want to go too political.
So if there are institutions can be biased by the societies that fund those institutions. So the data that any of those studies produce could be unreliable sometimes. I mean, obviously we've seen that in the past, right? Scientific research, but that was conducted in a highly biased way and then leads to conclusions that aren't fair. So I can't turn around and be like, no, actually, the only right thing to do is to trust what this data seems to suggest. So a lot of time that data doesn't really have like a definitive conclusion to it. It's just kind of maybe indicating in a certain direction and saying more research is needed. You're stuck at the point where you have to sort of say, well, there's what the data's saying, and then there's, you know, what I think is true. Andrew Tate's correct, I guess. I mean, I'm still a feminist because that's where I guess that's what I feel. But I don't really have an argument for anyone who has any kind of bigoted opinions about anything. Now, for the record, I do have a general policy on guys that move to Romania because they think it'll be easier to get away with sex crimes.
Bullshit.
But I feel like if that was just my point, then this video would be pretty short, and I do have some other things to say, so...
Why do you choose to live there?
In Romania?
Yeah, I know you have like businesses and things going on there, but why there?
Because Western society is degraded, and Western society is, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't like the way it functions and operates. I think it's the most corrupt, disgusting, degraded societies on earth. I find it offensive that a police officer in England will stop me for speeding and then refuse to take a bribe and pretend that... No.
There is a question. Why is Andrew Tate disgusted both by the degeneration of Western society and also the fact that it's harder for him to bribe the police? And the answer is because Andrew Tate sees those as the same thing. Andrew Tate is a solipsist, which is actually something he made pretty clear in his debate with Hensonn.
The truth of life is the truth that you experience as an individual. That is the only truth that we all live within.
Something he made clear in that debate is that the only thing he really trusts is his own mind. So when he talks about a degenerating culture, what he's really just talking about is a culture that in any way contradicts his own thoughts. Obviously, he thinks the police should always just sort of let him off of things, because he never really feels like what he's doing is wrong. Now, obviously, the fact is the financial world does basically work like this. Like, as long as you have the money, that's basically where morality begins and ends. You just sort of pay a fee at the end, and your ability to pay that fee pretty much determines what moral world you get to live in. And this is the kind of wealth that Andrew Tate boasts from completely legitimate sources.
In IRL, he's actually a multimillionaire because he launders the Romanian mafia's money. Unironically, this guy's like a legit gangster, and if he wanted to, I'm pretty sure he could have people killed.
So essentially, it's like, it's not that Andrew Tate thinks we are degenerating away from, like, basic morality. We're actually degenerating towards basic morality. And his priority is making as many minors as possible not think that way. I don't think it takes a freak or an incel for a young person to end up with this kind of perspective. I actually think it's like a very normal place for people to end up when they are in this situation where like every institution that controls their life is completely untrustable. At a time when the adults in your life don't really understand the world you live in because of the massive jumps in culture and technology over the last few decades. And where literally at any moment you could just Google any opinion you have and find like a blog or a study or an article or something that will say you're correct, that's right, that opinion you just came up with is 100% right. You know, like at that point, how do you know what's true and what's false? Like, what do you trust? And then Andrew Tate comes along and basically says, well, the only thing you can really trust is your own intuitions. Like, of course you trust only yourself when there's literally nothing else you feel like you can trust. And then he provides his own intuition.
I'll cure attention deficit disorder for any child. Watch me cure it with old school violence. I'm not condoning child abuse.
She's fresh, and I can fucking put my imprint on her and make her a good person.
It makes it pretty clear, pretty quickly, why just trusting your own intuitions is also a pretty bad way to live your life. You know, the outcome of all of this is people like Andrew Tate who use this as an excuse to just live a life that is entirely self-serving at the cost of others. So here's my secret. There was like that year span where I just suddenly disappeared off of YouTube. For about a third of that, I was kind of having a breakdown about this question. The idea of like, is truth a thing that could exist? Because every time I kept thinking about it, I just ended up being like, nah, not really. It's very hard to believe in the concept of a truth, right? Because even from just my channel, I talk about biases all the time. I talk about the ways that politics and culture can end up kind of manipulating the perspectives that you see growing up, and then ultimately like you end up being a product of that, and it's just very hard to get around. So it does lead you kind of feeling like, well, I guess nothing can actually be provably true then. And I do imagine, despite the different delivery mechanism and different ideas that are actually being spread, at the root of it, there is a similarity between like what people get from like me and then what people get from Andrew Tate, in the sense of like, oh, I don't really trust the media I consume or whatever, and I'm trying to kind of learn to understand or pick up on like dog whistles or ideas that are being spread. And people like Andrew Tate who are doing very much the same thing, with a very different message at the end. So this is something I'll kind of elaborate more in videos that I'm working on the channel. But this is a part of my philosophy I did want to get into while it seems relevant to this situation with Andrew Tate currently. You have to navigate this world where it's very difficult to really know what's true. And I think that's how you end up with a lot of Andrew Tates who sort of feel like, well, at the end of the day, maybe I should just do what is the most self-serving thing. Again, the reason that he thinks that the degeneration of Western society and not being able to bribe police officers are kind of the same thing. So the only way I've really been able to get away from this kind of solipsism that's represented by people like Andrew Tate has been through theories that have been put out by people like Richard Rorty and John Dewey that essentially talk about ideas and thoughts less as reflections of reality, because we're human beings and we have our limited human perspectives, so we're never really going to be able to face that reality to things, and instead think of those thoughts and ideas as like tools.
I mean, the Greek idea is that at a certain point in the process of inquiry, you come to rest because you've reached the goal. And the pragmatists are saying, we haven't the slightest idea what it would be like to reach the goal. We can tell you about justification, but we can't tell you about truth. There's nothing to be said about it. That is, we know how we justify beliefs. We know that the adjective true is the word we apply to the beliefs that we've justified. We know that a belief can be true without being justified. That's about all we know about truth. No description, or if you like, no interpretation, is closer to reality than any other. Some of them are more useful for some purposes than others, but that's about all you can say.
You look at a thought or an idea less as a reflection of the truth and more as a kind of conjuring or invention of an understanding for a certain purpose. So like an easy example is like how we categorize animals. We put animal species into different groups, and a lot of the time you'll have animals that seem like they're kind of the exception. And a pragmatist might say that the reason for this is that those categories aren't in nature. They're things that we have created to kind of help us make predictions or connections between different animals. It's less about the truth of the category, but the outcome of thinking of things this way. It's the outcome of the idea that's relevant rather than its relationship to the truth, because we could never really know the truth.
Truth with a capital T is sort of like God. There's not much you can say about God. That's why theologians talk about ineffability. The idea that the aim of inquiry is, conformity to correspondence to reality or seeing the face of God is one that we just can't make any use of. All we really know about is how to exchange justifications of our beliefs and desires with other human beings, and as far as we can see, that will be what human life will be like forever.
So I think the grain of an idea that's really appealing about people like Andrew Tate is that they say, at the end of the day, you can't ever really trust anything except for yourself. And I would actually go a step further than that and say you can never really trust anything including yourself. All I can really say is, what are the outcomes of Andrew Tate's ideas? And as far as I can tell, the outcome of Andrew Tate's ideas is the continuation of a world that makes most people the playthings of bored, rich sex criminals, exploits and oppresses any group it might be advantageous to take advantage of at any given time. A world that essentially replaces any notion of empathy with self-interest. So in the end, it doesn't really matter that Andrew Tate might have a point about how we're manipulated by mainstream media or institutions or the things around us, because the ideas that he then presents are shit. And there'd be shit for you, and there'd be shit for me, and there'd basically be shit for everyone except for Andrew Tate.
I have a very traditionally masculine life. I have fast cars and a big house and a lot of money.
And when he's already made it explicitly clear that he will never care about an opposing viewpoint, I don't really know that I'll be shedding a lot of tears that he doesn't get to use his preferred social media platform of choice anymore. It came to my attention while editing this video that some people might think that Andrew Tate's career is actually going to be helped by this. You know, it's going to give him attention and future success. Please roll the Milo Yiannopoulos footage.
This polyresin stuff, it's really come a long way in the last 20 years since they've been creating statues for people at home. They're not necessarily cast in metals because it's so inconvenient and also can be dangerous when you have kids around. You know, you can do serious injuries to children when you've got big hunks of metal on the table, especially with sharp edges. And so it's 11 3/4 inches tall. If you're thinking about how this is going to fit into your shrine or maybe even a bedside table, I know sometimes people like to wake up and say good morning to their favorite, people and saints and whatnot. As you can see. At home, it's just beautiful.
That was bullshit.